Welcome everyone to this webinar of the Master's Program of European Criminal Justice in a Global Context. And my name is Francois Christen and I'm a professor in criminal law at Utrecht University. And one of the topics of my expertise is European criminal law. And I'm the Master's Program leader, and I will tell you all about our unique Master's Program. And I will do that in close cooperation with my program coordinator, Assistant Professor Tony McGarry. Tony?
Yes, I am assistant professor at the Department of European Union Law, and as Francois said, I will coordinate this master's program.
Yes, and in this webinar, we will explain what our master's program is all about and what you can expect from the master's program. And we will also pay attention to career perspectives, because that's important when you follow this master's program, and how the admission procedure is organized. And this presentation will take approximately 30 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session for all your questions and remarks that you can pose by means of the chat. And our crew for today is, apart from us, we have other staff members present that are our moderators, Joske Graat, who is assistant professor in European criminal law, and Susanna Lara from the admissions office. And they can help you when you pose questions in the chat box. The chat box, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box below. And the chat is being monitored by our moderators, and they are there to help you and to answer all your questions that you have during this webinar. So make use of this opportunity and type in your questions, and we will provide you with answers. And as already mentioned, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, and then you can pose your questions for us, for the admission or other things. Any questions, all questions are allowed. Then we have also some technicalities. If you have some troubles in viewing this webinar, post a question to the moderator, and then they can help you and solve this problem. In many cases, it could be of help to have not using your smartphone, but to use a laptop which is connected to the internet, not by means of Wi-Fi, and to use a headphone. Let's get started with the program. If you want to learn something about the influence that the EU has and can have on domestic criminal law, and if you want to learn something about the harmonization, for instance, of defense rights within the European Union, if you want to learn something about the meaning and impact of human rights protection that the Charter of the EU can offer to us as a citizen and of the European Union, if you want to learn something about how economic crime is criminalized in the European Union, and which are the powers of the EU to draft penalizations in respect to criminal law and to harmonize them. If you want to learn something about how EU law can influence cooperation between national law enforcement authorities, then this master program is your program that you should attend, because this is a unique program which are we very proud of, that we can offer that in Utrecht, and we have some topical issues that we will deal with in this master's program, because this master's program will focus on, for instance, the constitutional foundations of criminal justice in a European setting, including this fundamental rights dimension and the harmonization of defense rights. We will pay attention to the effects and impact of EU law on domestic criminal justice and its relation between administrative law and, for instance, in the areas like money laundering, financial fraud, and serious cross-border crimes. And we will pay attention to the different legal regimes of transnational enforcement cooperation and exchange of information, like the European arrest warrant and the European investigation order. And we will pay attention to the relationships between the national criminal justice and EU authorities, such as like Europol, Eurojust, and the European Public Prosecutor Office. So with this program, we will enable you to gain profiled knowledge of EU criminal law and its interaction with the national criminal justice system. And we will also provide knowledge on the different authorities, the powers of the EU, and how this law enforcement organizations are organizing their investigation activities around Europe in case of transnational crime. So you can learn within our program to understand the relation between the EU and national criminal justice system and how the interaction takes place, and then evaluate what is the role of your country criminal justice system with respect to this European criminal justice rules. And that will prepare you for the legal practice. And we will pay attention later on in this webinar when we will talk about the career perspective, but it will also learn you different skills, and we will also discuss those skills later on in this webinar. But you will become then part of the avant-garde of the new field of specialists in the field of European criminal justice, and will become part of a community that we want to build with our master's program, in the program itself and afterwards. And then we can offer you exciting career opportunities later on in national, European, or international level. That is what we will offer you with our program. Why then doing this master's program in Utrecht? Because this unique program, as the examples I gave before, show the societal and academic relevance of the different themes and topics that we will deal with within this master's program. It will enable you to study the criminal justice system from a unique perspective, because then as a student you will become familiar with the EU law and instruments and institutions on the level of the EU, but also with criminal justice system, your own criminal justice system, but you will also learn from other students in interaction during tutorials, for instance, how their criminal justice system works and operates. And that is very interesting to get to know and to learn and to get inspired from other systems. We have also strong links with legal practice. We have internships, and we have good contacts with for instance, European organizations and national criminal justice organizations. And we are informed by legal practice because many of our staff is also has a function or a role in legal practice. So, with respect to the staff, Tony, you can explain all about it.
Yes, as you understood, this is a master's program that involves lots of different fields of law. And we are very proud to offer you this master's program that will be taught by leading experts in different fields and areas of law. And that includes, for example, experts in obviously criminal law and EU criminal law, constitutional law, administrative law, citizenship law, migration law, and other enforcement law. And the nice thing here is that these scholars, these experts, are not only experts in their field at the academic level, but most of the time they also are or have been practitioners, legal practitioners, such as judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and working in national, European, and international practice. What is important, and that is what we like also in Utrecht, is that we have a small scale master's program. So that means that students will be able to be in touch, I would say, regularly with the teaching staff, and that is, of course, extremely important. So we also believe that learning by doing is an important aspect of the teaching. Therefore, the combination of practitioners and scholars is important, and it is combined with lots of different exercises that we will develop during the whole programs, and that will consist in, for example, moot courts, preliminary questions posed to the court in the field of European criminal justice, when one party defends arguments against another party before national courts or before the Court of Justice of the European Union. This will also consist in negotiations exercise where students will have to find consensus in fictive EU legislation processes. All in all, we'll try to have this developed into 4 periods, and that is what Francois and I are going to discuss now, how this course, this whole master's program will be taught. In Utrecht, we have 4 periods extending from September until June of the next year, of course. And the first period for this master's program will consist in 2 main courses. The first one being actually the backbone, the structure of the whole master program, the constitutional and institutional course on the area of freedom, security, and justice. And in this course, we will discuss the constitutional, as I said, and institutional aspects of the EU framework within which EU criminal justice is developing. And most of the national criminal law has become, as you know, probably supranational, and therefore they are fallen into the scope of application of EU law. So the approach of this course will be more top-down, from the EU to the member states' perspective. So the main question here is, how do criminal justice systems and the area of freedom, security, and justice actually connect all? And some of the issues that will be discussed here are EU competence in order to harmonize criminal law, for example, the agenda setting of EU criminal law, in EU criminal law, the challenges in the field of EU of individuals' fundamental rights protection in a shared legal order. So this will be the first course, and in parallel, another course will be taught, which is the transnational law enforcement. And here the focus is more on the judicial cooperation at more horizontal level. And so within the EU in particular, but also between the EU member states and third countries. Now, EU law is not only a matter for the member states to enforce. The states have to enforce EU law and EU criminal law, but in particular because of the opening of the borders between the member states, there are new concepts that have been created, such as the concept of the principle of mutual trust, the principle of mutual recognition, the principle of availability, and all these principles are very important for the current and also the future practice of lawyers. So this course will provide you with the essential toolkit that you will need in your future practice, in order to understand how these different principles work together, but also how they connect with the old principles that we used to have in the legal assistance, the traditional, I would say, assistance in criminal matters. The first period will be followed from, I think, November of the academic year by the second period.
Second period, yes, and I'll tell you something about it, because this period starts half November 2020 and it lasts until February 2021. And we have 2 courses, that is indirect enforcement of EU law. The first course, The EU, as already mentioned by and explained by Tony, is dependent on the national criminal justice system with regard to the enforcement of the rules that stem from the European Union level, like a directive on money laundering, anti-money laundering. And national criminal justice has to enforce the penalization of money laundering at the domestic level. And there you have the problem of that you have an indirect enforcement of EU law, because the EU is dependent on national and law enforcement authorities. And there is then, you can also imagine that there is a constant struggle between the European interests of the EU and the domestic interests and the local interests that are at stake with respect to the enforcement of those rules. And at the same time, the EU wants to achieve a level playing field, you could say, with respect to what is the level of how the penalizations are organized, but also what is the level of the cooperation between the law enforcement authorities. And then you have also then the relationship between the criminal law enforcement authorities and administrative law enforcement authorities. And the way the EU has organized the enforcement, they will also oblige the member states to make use of private parties like banks and other financial institutions to monitor their own accounts with respect to possible anti-money laundering activities. And so they are also involved as private parties in law enforcement activities. And also you could think of airline service providers. And this raises numerous of questions in relation to what is then their role in the national criminal justice system? Their role is there because of the EU requires so. And what is then the legal protection of those banks, financial service providers, and on the other side, their clients? And those questions will be dealt with in this very interesting course of the indirect enforcement of EU law. And the second course is about supranational criminal law enforcement, and this course takes the vertical perspective, the relationship between the European bodies in this respect to criminal justice and the national bodies. Then we have also the vertical relationship because national member states have to implement, for instance, directives, like the directive on market abuse, the directive on human trafficking, and those legal instruments require that the national law enforcement authorities cooperate with each other, but also with European agencies. And we have the opportunity that we will get the European Public Prosecutor, which is there to protect the financial interests of the European Union, but he will have to use also the powers that are there on the level of the domestic criminal justice systems. And then they have also to cooperate and to exchange information. And which power will be used in which case? Is that on the level of the European Public Prosecutor Office or on the level of the domestic public prosecutor? So these questions are very interesting and pose challenges to the law enforcement authorities, and those challenges we will discuss in this course. Then we go over to the third period. And the third period is from starting of February of 2021 till the half of April. And then we go minutes to the second slide about the Capita Selector, because that is something we're really proud of. It's something that is unique in the Netherlands and also in Europe. It gives you a unique opportunity to go into that on a specific topic within only 3 weeks' time. It's very brief, but it's very intense and very small-scale teaching. That so you have, for instance, 8 students, and you will discuss all the aspects of, for instance, the defense rights and how they are protected on the level of the EU, and what brings it then along for the domestic criminal justice system, and what is then the influence. And then you can also choose your own topics, because we offer 8 modules, and you can choose 5 of them. You must choose 5 of them. And we have the topics mentioned on the slide. We have modules on which more or less focus on the EU level, like the constitutional aspects, the Charter of and the protection of human rights, which you already mentioned, agencies on the level of the EU. Then we have modules that focus on substantive criminal law, like the anti-money laundering directives, the anti-terrorism directive, and what does then mean with respect to which kind of behavior is criminalized on the level of the domestic criminal justice system, and how is then this influenced by those directives. And then the more procedural modules which focus on like judicial cooperation between the law enforcement authorities, defense rights, how it is organized, which rights and which way, procedural aspects like protection of interest, mutual recognition, European arrest warrants. You can also think of all kind of topics. So those topics are on the spot, and those are of interest right now in the EU level, at the national level, and you can choose from them. And then we have also in those modules the interaction between research and teaching, because those modules will be taught by the leading experts in the field, which do conduct their own research on that topic. So that is very interesting and a very interesting opportunity to offer. That's the third period. We turn to the fourth period.
Yes, and and if I may just add something, with these modules, you also will have different kinds of assessments, and different skills will be, of course, assessed, like moot courts and negotiations. That is where but no exams, for example. So that is also important. I think that we can add that. Concerning the fourth period, this, as you know, is usual at the end of the master. You have to write a master thesis. And this is indeed this fourth period, which is from mid-April 2021 until the end of June 2021. This period will be reserved for writing your master thesis. And as you know, of course, this constitutes a major independent academic research, and you will be able to write it within the field of European criminal justice, obviously, in English. In order for you to be prepared, or in order to prepare you for this exercise, we will have what we call the RTT, Research and Thesis Trajectory, that starts with the academic year in September 2020 and ends with you submitting the thesis. This trajectory will consist in different lectures where you will learn about the tools necessary to do research, the methodology, the sources that are necessary, that are available to do research in European criminal justice in particular. And in addition to that, during this RTT, which it takes place the whole year, you will have moments where you will be able to peer review, so have other students review your progress and on the research. At the end, hopefully you will submit a nice thesis. I give you the floor for the honors
program, because that's something that's for the students that are willing to invest in their own developing their own knowledge and skills. We offer something extra, which is on top of the ordinary master's program, which is only for the top 10% of the students, and we will have a separate selection procedure for admission to this honors program. It is some extra activities like gaining some extra experience with gaining to skills, to read certain work, and then to discuss it with a very small group of 4 or 5 students that are admitted to this honors program. And it requires some extra time that you have to invest in this honors program, 10 hours a week. And then you will get a certificate at the end of the master's program if you meet all the requirements that are on the honors program. And you will also then have interaction and meetings with students from other master's programs who are also admitted to this honors program. And then you have a separate every month on Monday evening, they have different activities like law and literature, like negotiation also, and other skills that are trained and offered with experts from the Netherlands that will share their knowledge in this master's program. Let's talk about the career perspectives. For the Dutch students, it's good to mention that the graduates are suited to life in a European international organization, but also they meet the civil effect covenant in the Netherlands. So you are allowed to become a public prosecutor or a lawyer or a judge if you have followed then the subsequent educations, etc. But that's possible if you have finalized this master's program. So it enables you to get a job at the level of the domestic criminal justice systems, like specialized organizations, the Investigation Bureau for Economic Crime, for instance, the Public Prosecutor Office, and also at the judiciary, you have specialized chambers at different courts that they have staff that's supporting the judges, and they have different chamber at the District Court of Amsterdam, which deals with all the European arrest warrants, for instance. And there are perspectives, and they are in need for experts with profound knowledge about European criminal justice. And we have then also law firms. We have law firms that are specialized in, for instance, dealing with cases where the European arrest warrant is used, European evidence warrant, all these kind of things. That are possibilities at the national level. So many aspects, many possibilities, and we have also had the separate division, the Ministries of Justice and Security. We have NGOs that are focusing on this respect, national NGOs that have also different jobs. So there's a lot of possibilities are out there. And as you will be one of the first that graduate with this unique master program, then they will are very interested in you because you are the first experts in the field. But it is not confined only to the national level, but because if you have attend this program, then you have also the possibilities to widen your view and go into Europe or international.
Yes. Yes, the nice thing of that program is that you also will study EU law and international, public international law, and the master's program will open the doors of the European institutions, for example, and the European Commission, which is always looking for applicants in this particular DG Justice, but the European Parliament, and there are committees such as the Libe Committee, which is focusing on fundamental rights and criminal law. The Court of Justice, obviously, that has to deal with a lot of cases concerning the European arrest warrant, for example, but also the Council of Ministers. In addition to that, European bodies and agencies, just to name a few. Eurojust, which is also actually in the Netherlands, Europol, which is also in the Netherlands, the European Public Prosecutor's Office, which is not far from the Netherlands. And finally, obviously, you will be able to work in law firms that are now developing departments concerning the enforcement or EU law, criminal law enforcement. So a lot of, I would say, perspectives for this master's program.
Yes, and you will be the first if you have attended our program.
Definitely.
How then to join us? The admission procedure.
Yes. Universities, if you have a bachelor in law, that is obviously not such a problem. You have the fulfill the requirements. If you do not have a bachelor in law, but for example a bachelor in liberal arts or and science, then you need to have at least substantial knowledge of criminal law and some knowledge of European Union law. If you have doubts about that, please send an email to this address that is mentioned on this slide. Do not hesitate if you think that you are at the edge and maybe you do not meet the exact requirements. We can always look at the dossier and possibly discuss your application. The deadlines, I think, are important in this respect. If you are non-EU citizens, or if you are coming from a non-EU country, I would say 1st of April is the deadline for the application, whereas for EU countries, the deadline will be the 1st of June. And we recommend you to apply as soon as possible if you want, for example, to apply for scholarships and so forth. It is important that you are on time. I think that
we've talked a lot.
We have talked a lot.
We've told you many things about our unique master's program, but we reckon that perhaps you have some questions for us. So it's time for the Q&A session. Please feel free and be invited to pose your questions by means of the chat. And you can see them on screen, and so we are able then to answer your questions. We are here for you to answer your questions.
So no limits. I see that there's no limit amount of space for this master program. That was one of the questions I see.